Women journalists are at the epicenter of risk. This pandemic of misogyny and hatred needs to be tackled now. Even there, though, we can find strength. After all, you don't really know who you are until you're forced to fight for it. Now let me pull out so we're clear about the problem we all face and how we got here. The attacks against us in Rappler began 5 years ago when we demanded an end to impunity on two fronts: Rodrigo Duterte's drug war and Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook. Today, it has only gotten worse, and Silicon Valley sins came home to roost in the United States on January 6th with mob violence on Capitol Hill. What happens on social media doesn't stay on social media. Online violence is real-world violence. Social media is a deadly game for power and money, what Shoshana Zuboff calls surveillance capitalism, extracting our private lives for outsized corporate gain, our personal experiences sucked into a database, organized by AI, then sold to the highest bidder. Highly profitable micro-targeting operations are engineered to structurally undermine human will. I've repeatedly called it a behavior modification system in which we are all Pavlov's dogs, experimented on in real time with disastrous consequences in countries like mine, Myanmar, India, Sri Lanka, so many more. These destructive corporations have siphoned money away from news organizations, and now they pose a foundational threat to markets and elections. Facebook is the world's largest distributor of news, and yet studies have shown that lies laced with anger and hate spread faster and further than facts. These American companies controlling our global information ecosystem are biased against facts, biased against journalists. They are by design dividing us and radicalizing us. I've said this repeatedly over the last 5 years. Without facts, you can't have truth. Without truth, you can't have trust. Without trust, we have no shared reality, no democracy, and it becomes impossible to deal with the existential problems of our times: climate, coronavirus, now the battle for truth. When I first was arrested in 2019, the officer said, "Ma'am, trabaho lang po." "Ma'am, I'm only doing my job." Then he lowered his voice to almost a whisper as he read my Miranda rights. He was really uncomfortable, and I almost felt sorry for him, except he was arresting me because I'm a journalist. This officer was a tool of power and an example of how a good man can turn evil and how great atrocities happen. Hannah Arendt wrote about the banality of evil when describing men who carried out the orders of Hitler. How career-oriented bureaucrats can act without conscience because they justify what they're doing because they're only following orders. This is how a nation and the world loses its soul. You have to know what values you're fighting for. You have to draw the lines early, but if you haven't done so, please do it now. Where on this side you're good, this side you're evil. Some governments may be lost causes, and if you're working in tech, I'm talking to you. How can you have election integrity if you don't have integrity of facts? That's the problem facing countries with elections next year. Among them, Brazil, Hungary, France, the United States, and my Philippines, where we are at a do-or-die moment with presidential elections on May 9th. 35 years after the People Power Revolt ousted Ferdinand Marcos and forced his family into exile, his son, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., is the front-runner for president. And he has built an extensive disinformation network on social media, which Rappler exposed in 2019. It's literally changing history in front of our eyes. To show how disinformation is both a local and global problem, take the Chinese information operations taken down by Facebook in September 2020, a year ago. It was creating fake accounts using AI-generated photos for the US elections, polishing the image of the Marcoses in the Philippines, campaigning for the daughter of Duterte, of President Duterte, and attacking me and Rappler. Chinese information operations. So what are we going to do? An invisible atom bomb has exploded in our information ecosystem, and the world must act as it did after Hiroshima. Like that time, we need to create new institutions like the United Nations and new codes stating our values, like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, to prevent humanity from doing its worst. It's an arms race in our information ecosystem. To stop that requires a multilateral approach that all of us must be part of. It begins by restoring facts. We need information ecosystems that live and die by facts. We do this by shifting social priorities to rebuild journalism for the 21st century while regulating and outlawing the surveillance economics that profit from hate and lies. We need to help independent journalism survive. First, by giving greater protection to journalists and standing up against states which target journalists. Then we need to address the advertising model of journalism. This is part of the reason that I agreed to co-chair the International Fund for Public Interest Media, which is trying to raise money from overseas development assistance funds. Right now, while journalists are under attack on every front, only 0.3% of ODA funds is spent on journalism. If we nudge that to just 1%, we can raise $1 billion a year for news organizations. That will be crucial for the Global South. Journalists must embrace technology. That's why, with the help of Google News Initiative, Rappler rolled out a new platform 2 weeks ago designed to build communities of action. It won't be as viral as what the tech platforms built, but the North Star is not profit alone. It is facts, truth, and trust.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.